Where was Abraham Lincoln born? Well, the history books we all read in school tell us Kentucky. A lot of people, including some historians, though, question whether that is true.
What if the truth about Abraham Lincoln's mother was never lost, just hidden in her DNA? For more than a century, historians questioned her origins, pointing to gaps in the records and a scandal that refused to fade. Then modern genetic testing stepped in and reopened the mystery. What it revealed didn't just rewrite a family tree. It uncovered a past filled with scandal, survival, and a genetic signature so rare it traced back to a world no one could have imagined. The law of the nobody. For years, there have been rumors and endless speculation about Abraham Lincoln's roots. We're talking decades of historians debating and digging through court papers, family records, and faded documents just to uncover the truth about his family ties. And to understand why they went to such lengths, we need to step back into a time when your family history wasn't just personal information as we treat it today. Back then, your family background had the power to make or mar your future. In the 19th century, when Lincoln was born, who your parents were did more than influence how neighbors saw you. It could decide whether you would be accepted or respected, and even how the law would treat you. In some cases, it could affect whether you were fully recognized under the law at all. If you're born to unwed parents, the law doesn't just brand you illegitimate. It calls you filius nullius, the Latin word for a child of no one. It simply means that you can't claim your father's name or property or get any legal protection from him at all. So being born out of wedlock was not just any scandal. It came with a stigma that stayed with you for life, especially in small communities where everyone knew each other's story. It's not a stigma anyone wants at all. Now, it didn't stop with the children. The mothers also faced a more unsettling reality. As a single mother, you're not just going to face the stigma. Society also practically treats you like criminals. In places like Kentucky and Virginia, pregnancies outside of marriage were not considered private struggles or mistakes. They were considered crimes against the state. Many of these women were dragged into court. They were fined, publicly shamed, and in some cases even jailed. And it gets worse. Court hearings were open, often attended by neighbors and community members. So everyone would know your story, whether you wanted them to or not. For these women, the shame was not temporary. It stays with them for years, shaping how they were treated, how their children were viewed, and how history would remember them. That's why families had to get creative to protect their children. Relatives or neighbors often raised them to avoid public shame. Some children were introduced as distant cousins or orphans. Now, this was not about lying. It was about survival in a society that could be harsh and unforgiving. This was the reality for Abraham Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hanks. Lincoln understood early on that parts of his family's history were sensitive and could not be shared freely in a world that judged people by their birth. And as he became a politician, he became more cautious. He knew how quickly rivals could take something personal and turn it into an attack. A single word about his mother's past could be used to question his character and his ability to lead. And at a time when reputation meant everything, even a small doubt could grow into something dangerous. So when he stepped onto the national stage, he kept this part of his life private, knowing the wrong version of the story could cost him his career. But in a rare moment of vulnerability, after years of guarding his secret, he let his mask slip, and what he revealed changed everything we thought we knew about him. The buggy ride confession and the Shipley family saga. In 1850, Abraham Lincoln was riding in a buggy with his closest friend and law partner, William Herndon. Now, Lincoln was known to be a man of few words. He usually kept his thoughts, his worries, and his secrets tightly locked away. But on this particular ride, something was different. According to Herndon, Lincoln leaned in and shared a secret that has stayed with him his entire life. He said Lincoln told him his mother was an illegitimate child. Get this, it was not just a slip of the tongue. He said Lincoln went ahead to explain that he believed his mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was the daughter of a wealthy and highly respected nobleman from Virginia, a man whose name was never recorded. Lincoln believed his intelligence, his height, and his sharp logical thinking did not come from his father, Thomas Lincoln. They were gifts he inherited from this mysterious grandfather, a hidden source of lineage and ability that he believed set him apart from other children. This secret shaped the way Abraham Lincoln saw himself. He believed his mother was a victim crushed by the harsh judgments of society, yet she survived and raised him with strength. To him, she was not just a mother, she was a superhero and the very foundation of everything he had become. This hidden nobility, he thought, ran through his blood and gave him a spark that made him different from his mates. However, Lincoln understood just how dangerous this secret could be. In the 19th century, people believed character could be inherited, and family background could define a person's reputation. If the public had known that the man they admired greatly was the son of a woman born outside of wedlock, his enemies could have used it to destroy him. He reportedly begged Herndon to keep it a secret because he knew that revealing it could have ended his career before it even began. Herndon kept the secret for decades. He watched Abraham Lincoln rise from a frontier lawyer to President of the United States. He saw him guide the country through the Civil War, fight to end slavery, and work relentlessly to build a future where everyone will be free. But unfortunately, Abraham Lincoln passed away tragically in 1865. In 1889, many years after his death, Herndon decided the world deserved to know the full truth. Not the poor boy from the log cabin story we are all familiar with. He wanted people to see beyond the polished legend. He wanted the world to know the struggles and the secrets that shaped Lincoln into the man he became. So, Herndon published a book titled Herndon's Lincoln, The True Story of a Great Life. The book didn't shy away from uncomfortable truths, including Lincoln's mother's illegitimacy and the challenges that came with it. And before long, the book went viral and caused a stir. Abraham Lincoln's family was furious. Even his only surviving son, Robert Todd Lincoln, was not happy with the book. Critics called Herndon a liar and argued he just wanted to make some cash, while others believed he was the only one brave enough to tell the truth since he was Abraham Lincoln's closest friend and he had no reason to lie. However, while people were still arguing about whether Herndon was telling the truth or not, a researcher named Lewis Warren stepped into the story. He contradicted Herndon's version and argued that Nancy Hanks was legitimate. He claimed her mother wasn't Lucy Hanks, but Lucy Shipley, a widow who had married into the Hanks family. In Warren's version, Nancy came from the respectable Shipley family of Maryland, not from scandal. This story became known as the Shipley family saga. And for years, these two stories clashed, and many were confused and didn't know what to believe anymore. Researchers spent years debating and comparing each other's evidence, but in the end, none of them could prove anything because their evidence was not definitive. Was William Herndon telling the truth, or was Lewis Warren right all along? The answer was locked inside a Kentucky courthouse, and when those files were opened, they revealed more than anyone expected. The 1789 crime. To put an end to the long debate, researchers went digging through the old, dusty records at a courthouse in Kentucky. There, tucked away for centuries, they found a criminal indictment dated November 1789. Interestingly, this document is named after Abraham Lincoln's grandmother, Lucy Hanks. Just as we mentioned earlier, in the 19th century, the law was strict, and grand juries often acted as moral guardians of the community. Lucy Hanks was brought to court because she had a child, Nancy Hanks. she was formally charged with fornication. Yes, that was the legal term. Well, this may sound absurd and extreme today, but it was a serious legal charge used against single mothers in those days. The state does not care about your privacy or personal choice. Its major concern was about responsibility. Who would raise the child? Who would ensure the child did not become a burden on the community? The very existence of Lucy's baby was all the proof the court needed to indict her. Also, the timing of the case fit the story perfectly because Nancy was born in 1784. She was about 5 years old when the state finally exposed her mother. For those first years, Nancy and Lucy lived without legal protection. They were reportedly exposed, humiliated, and under constant public scrutiny. The pressure was intense, and just 5 months after being charged, Lucy wrote a note in her own handwriting giving her consent to marry a man named Henry Sparrow, which was not a surprise, as that was mostly the only way women avoided legal and social punishments at the time. Lucy got married to Henry Sparrow in 1970, and the charges were dropped. The state later considered her respectable, but unfortunately, while the marriage protected Lucy, Nancy still bore the consequences. Because she was born before the marriage, the law refused to let her take the Sparrow name. She remained Nancy Hanks, carrying her mother's maiden name as a permanent public reminder of the family's legal and social stigma. Also, the general English law was that every illegitimate child should be named after their mother, not their father. These court documents confirmed what had long been speculated, and they also confirmed that William Herndon's story was real and Lewis Warren's was wrong. Lincoln had truly confessed the secret about his mother. But here's the thing, even with these papers in hand, the greatest mystery remained. The documents revealed the scandal and the struggle, but they didn't show the nobleman Lincoln believed he inherited his intelligence, height, and sharp mind from. So, Nancy's father remained a mystery. This missing name is what kept historians up late at night for years, because every time they thought they were close to the truth, another gap in the record appeared, and the answer slipped away again. By 2015, the debate over Abraham Lincoln's family background had already stretched across more than a century. Before long, researchers stopped arguing over faded ink and fragile courthouse papers. They stepped away from dusty files and family legends. Instead, they turned to modern technology. They believed that if the old records could not speak clearly, perhaps biology would, and they can finally uncover a mystery that has remained unsolved for more than a century. The DNA reset. In 2015, a group of genealogists decided to end the debate once and for all. The team, consisting of Suzanne Hallstrom, Nancy Royce, Stephen Whitlock, Richard Heilman, and Gerald Haslam, announced that they had come together to carry out a DNA test to confirm the true maternal origins of Abraham Lincoln. But there was a major challenge. Abraham Lincoln had no living descendants. In fact, his last direct heir, Robert Todd Lincoln Beckwith, passed away in 1985 without any children. This meant scientists could not trace DNA directly through Lincoln's own bloodline, and any traditional testing was simply not possible. So the team decided to try something else. Instead of focusing on Lincoln himself, they turned to mitochondrial DNA. This is a special type of DNA passed from mother to child. Unlike other forms of genetic material, it changes very little over time. Because of this stability, a woman today can carry almost the same mitochondrial signature as her female ancestor from 100 years ago. And for this case, that detail was important. If researchers could find living women who descended through an unbroken female line from Lucy Hanks, be it her sister, daughter, or even granddaughter, they could test whether Nancy truly belonged to the Hanks family or whether the long-argued Shipley theory still had weight. The search focused not on Lincoln's paternal mystery, but on his mother's maternal line. According to the report, The genealogist located and tested women connected to Lucy Hanks's maternal branch. Hallstrom had actually begun the Hanks DNA project back in 2002, determined to settle the controversy that had divided historians for generations. By 2015, she and her colleagues had gathered enough participants to attempt the test. They carried out this test on both the Hanks family and the Shipley's families, just to be sure. The results, they said, showed identical mitochondrial DNA across multiple branches of the Hanks family. Based on this result, they concluded that Nancy Hanks was indeed Lucy's daughter. For those who had long believed that Nancy was born outside of marriage, this felt like long-awaited confirmation. After generations of debate, science appeared to agree with the older documents. Still, historians responded with caution. The findings were not published in a major scientific journal, and without the formal review process, some experts hesitated to call the matter fully settled. Regardless, the report still drew national attention. It seemed to bring the long-running debate closer to resolution than ever before. What faded ink and fragile papers could not clearly prove, biology now seemed to support. Reported that the family carried a rare genetic marker known as haplogroup X1c. Now, haplogroups are used to trace very ancient patterns of human migration. They help scientists understand how populations moved across continents thousands of years ago. But this marker, called X1c, is very different and rare, especially in families with colonial American history. It appears in less than 1% of Western Europeans and is found more often in parts of North Africa and the Middle East, especially in places like the Levant. If this is correct, it means that Abraham Lincoln's mother's family might have roots that go much farther than the English or Irish villages people usually assumed. This was an unexpected discovery that stopped them in their tracks. Most colonial Americans of European descent carry familiar haplogroups like H, J, T, U, or K. These are common lineages, reflecting British, Irish, and German roots. Haplogroup H alone makes up nearly half of all European mitochondrial DNA. So, if you tested a random person from colonial Virginia, you'd almost certainly find one of these common European markers. But X1c is a completely different story. Instead of leading straight to Britain, the DNA points to a deeper story in the Mediterranean and Near East, shaped by people moving across the region thousands of years ago. It turns what looked like a small, local American mystery into something with a global twist. Yet, as fascinating as these genetic codes are, they only tell us where the family came from, not the life they were forced to lead. The Sentinel's burden. When we look back at the disturbing reality of this story, the most disturbing truth is not about a rare genetic code or an ancient migration map. Those details are interesting, but they are only a small part of a much larger story. The real lesson is how harsh early Americans were in judging people, especially women, and the impossible standards they set. Imagine Lucy Hanks, a young woman realizing she was pregnant. Her first thought must have been the stigma she would face. We do not know exactly what happened. Maybe it was a brief romance, a broken promise, or something more troubling. What we do know is how the law treated her. Virginia did not see Lucy as a mother. They saw her as a criminal. She was dragged into court, humiliated in front of her neighbors, and marked with a social stain meant to last a lifetime. Her daughter, Nancy, entered the world already judged and overlooked. This shadow followed Abraham Lincoln from the moment he was born. Every step of his life carried the weight of secrets that could have destroyed him. Despite everything, Lincoln did not let them define him. He had no wealth, no formal education, and no famous name to open doors. Yet he rose to become one of the most admired presidents in American history. He became the man who saved the Union. He looked at his beginnings, at a childhood marked by hardship and judgment, and he saw not shame, but strength. He credited his mother for the intelligence, empathy, and determination that shaped him. Looking at all the documents, alleged DNA reports, and years of speculation, one conclusion is clear: the idea of pure ancestry is a myth. Lincoln's greatness did not come from his family tree. It came from survival, courage, and the ability to rise above society's unfair expectations. Today, the truth about his grandfather and where Lincoln's intelligence, height, and sharp mind really came from remains a mystery. The question still lingers, and perhaps one day modern technology will finally be able to uncover the truth and solve the mystery. This question should stay with us. If the man who held a divided nation together and guided America through its darkest hour came from a past the law called illegitimate, what does it say about the labels we still put on people today and the limits we place on their potential? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, click on the next video on your screen. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.